So on this subject of Alzheimer's, it's increasing globally. I was reading something, I think, from like the Alzheimer's Association that said they're predicting by 2050 that there's going to be 150 or 160 million people globally that have Alzheimer's disease. There's still a lot of question marks around what causes it, what increases its probability, etc. But what do you think the cause of Alzheimer's is?
I think there are many causes of it. And the going wisdom until recently was excessive beta amyloid plaque formation caused Alzheimer's. And there's a lot of questions around that theory. I think I have a mnemonic I like called Bright Minds. You want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors. So I think there are, in fact, many roads to Alzheimer's disease. And people go, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Dementia is the umbrella category. You start losing your faculties. Alzheimer's is one of the types. But the more you get into it, you realize it's a pretty mixed bag. And so Bright Minds, blood flow, retirement and aging, inflammation, genetics, head trauma, toxins, mental health. You know, if a woman is depressed, it doubles her risk of Alzheimer's disease. If a man is depressed, it quadruples his risk of Alzheimer's. And then the sleeper in all of these is infections, immunity and infections. Many of us think it's one of the major causes of Alzheimer's disease. In fact, there's a new study out on COVID. People who had COVID had a significantly increased risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. And then neurohormones, and we have this epidemic of low testosterone in young males now, diabetes and sleep. Diabetes is you either have high blood sugar and or you're overweight. And that one risk factor, if you have that one risk factor, now all of a sudden you have 10 of the 11 risk factors.
Because if you have diabetes.
If you're overweight or you have high blood sugar, it lowers blood flow to your brain. It prematurely ages your brain. It increases inflammation. Fat cells produce something called adipokines, which is inflammatory molecules. It changes your genetics. Fat stores toxins. You're more likely to be depressed. It damages your immunity. Takes healthy testosterone, turns it into unhealthy cancer-promoting forms of estrogen, and impairs your sleep. And then people go, oh, but you're fat shaming. And it's like, no, I published a study on 33,000 people. As your weight goes up, the size and function of the brain goes down. Somebody's got to say the truth. The truth is being at an unhealthy weight is unhealthy for your brain and body.
I was reading some studies earlier on when I spoke to a insulin resistance expert. One of the things he said to me was that they now almost describe Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes. That's a phrase that's often used. And when they look at brains that are insulin resistant, the person between 40 or 80% of the time, depending on which studies you look at, has insulin resistance, i.e. they've had elevated blood sugar levels, which have caused an insulin resistance, or something else. It could be stress that causes insulin resistance, or many other things. But it's interesting to think of, as you said, that one thing, which is the high blood sugar levels, insulin resistance, can have such a profound impact on the brain. And if I've ever heard a case for being a bit more careful about sugar and other things that will spike my blood sugar levels and chronically, I think that's probably it. Because your brain, as you said at the start of this conversation, drives everything in your life. And to think that sugar, an overconsumption of sugar, shall I say, has such a profound impact on the brain is pause for me. Because I don't like sugar that much.
You don't like it as much as you like your brain.
Yeah, and my life.
So there's a study from the Mayo Clinic where they looked at people who had primarily a fat-based diet. So fish, healthy oils, avocados, nuts and seeds. They had 42% less risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. And then they looked at people who had primarily a protein-based diet. So think of a caveman diet, 21% less risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. And then they looked at people that had a standard American diet, simple carbohydrate-based diet, bread, pasta, potatoes, rice, fruit juice, sugar, a 400% increased risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. It's the sugar and the foods that quickly turn to sugar, which goes with the insulin diabetes type 3 hypothesis. You have to manage it. And the reason this is so important to me is having high blood sugar makes your blood vessels brittle and more likely to break, which means it takes longer for things to heal and you're more likely to have a stroke. And having a stroke increases your risk of Alzheimer's tenfold.
So you're a fan of the keto diet? I sound like
For some people. I find that it doesn't have enough plants in it, which means it's probably not going to be awesome for your microbiome. So I'm more a fan of a paleo diet that has healthy fat, healthy protein, and lots of plants.
We've covered so much. There's the one thing we started talking about briefly, I think before we started recording, was the subject of hope and grief. I've never heard someone talk about the impact that grief has on the brain when we lose someone, when we're going through prolonged pain because of a loss.
Oh, I know more about this than I want. It activates the limbic or emotional circuits in the brain. And so when you lose someone important to you, or even a pet, like I had, made me cry, a white shepherd, and so beautiful and so sweet. And he got cancer. And when he died, he still lives in my head. And I lost someone important to me about 20 years ago. And for like a year, I was just not okay. And so I scanned myself, and my emotional brain was so busy. And it's like when you have someone, they actually become ingrained in every fun place in your brain. So they get stored in multiple places in your brain. And when they're not there anymore, your brain still looks for them. And figuring out ways to sort of calm down your emotional brain can be so helpful.
What part of the brain is that? Is that the amygdala?
No, it's more the insular cortex and the thalamus. And that's what we found with depression. I published a study with scientists from USC and Los Angeles Children's Hospital on depression. And what we found, those were the structures that were dramatically overactive compared to people who were not depressed.
So in grief, the prefrontal cortex, I'm assuming because that's the more rational part of the brain, that's probably going to be quieter.
Right.
What do I...
And so it's the prefrontal cortex you bring in to the loss that often determines how you deal with it.
Okay.
And so your emotional brain fires up if you're drinking and taking the prefrontal cortex offline. It can't manage it. So one thing people don't understand is the fibers from the prefrontal cortex to the rest of the brain are inhibitory, which means they calm things down. So if this isn't working right, the emotional part can sort of override it, and it becomes problematic. And so protecting this is so important to managing so much of your life. I mean, it's really the most human, thoughtful part of us. And what we found within hope was that insular cortex was low. It's really interesting to us. And hope is tomorrow can be better, and I have a part in it. When you're hopeless, you don't believe you have agency to make tomorrow better. And so often there are hope training courses that can be good. And with all of my patients, I do this exercise called the one-page miracle I referred to earlier. It's like, write down, what do you want? Relationships, work, money, physical, emotional, spiritual health, all these things, write it down. And so we talked earlier about we're recording this in January. I have all my patients do it when I first see them, and then every January for sure. And then you just ask yourself, does my behavior get me what I want? But it starts with, well, what do you want? You have to write it down. Like with my wife, I'm very clear. I want a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship. Always want that. Don't always feel like that. I have these rude thoughts that show up, or conflicting ideas that'll just show up in my head. And I'm like, oh no, don't say that. No, don't do that, because it doesn't fit. And it's been the best relationship of my life because both of us have the same goals. And we're pretty good at matching our behavior to the goal. And as a CEO, right, what do you do with companies? You have a business plan. And then you have regular meetings and key performance indicators to like go, how are we doing? And if we're not doing great, we change. But it always starts with a plan. And most individuals never have a plan.
So they're kind of just being dragged around by whatever. I mean,
and now in social media, it's very dangerous because you might want what the Kardashians have. And it's like, wait a minute. Relationships, work, money, physical, emotional, spiritual health. And then if I had tattoos, I don't yet. My wife got one, it freaked me out. It's my daughter's birthday. But the tattoo would be, does it fit? Know what you want, and then ask yourself every day, my behavior get me what I want? And some people go, well, isn't that selfish? It's like, absolutely not. Because if I'm good for everyone around me.
Your goal could be to be a great father.
It absolutely should be a great father. It's to be a loving husband, kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate. And oh, by the way, when people do our program, their erections are better, just saying, because blood flow is better when brain health is better, because your brain uses 20% of the blood flow in your body. And so if you're working to have a healthy brain, everything works better. Just saying.
Why did that come to mind when I asked about your goals?
Well, because I went passionate, and I'm like, okay, you have to be clear. Or even think about work. What's the goal with work? It's to do meaningful work. It's to make a difference.
You're a father. I'm not a father yet, but I hope to be. I've got 3 little nieces. My brother's had 2 little nieces and 1 nephew. My brother's a year older than me and he's had 3 kids already, so I've got some catching up to do. But as I'm progressing towards this season of life, one of the things I think about, having met you, is how to raise healthy brains. Like, what parenting style is going to make sure that my kids have very healthy brains? There's so much conversation about parenting styles. Some people say just let them do whatever they want to do. Some people say be an authoritarian and put rules in place. I'm wondering, from the perspective of someone who scanned 260,000 brains, how do you raise a perfect brain?
Well, one, you get rid of the idea that you're going to raise a perfect brain,
Okay.
because there's a little OCD in there.
Mhm.
The first thing you do is you have goals for yourself. What kind of parent do you want to be? And what kind of child do you want to raise? And for me, I want to be present, kind, and effective. And for my kids, I want them to be mentally strong and resilient. And I want them to feel good about themselves. And then you bond with them. You want to be a good dad? Bonding requires 2 things: time, actual physical time, and listening. So time, I have an exercise I love so much called special time. 20 minutes a day, do something with your child that your child wants to do. And during that time, no commands, no questions, no directions, just time to bond. The most important thing to children is time with their parents. And people are busy. Doesn't have to be a lot. But if you do that 20 minutes a day, it's money in the relational bank. So my first literary agent, I think he was 42 when he had his first child. And he's like, my daughter, she's 2. Laura never wants to be with me. I come home, she completely ignores me. She just wants her mother. She wants nothing to do with me. That's because she's a girl, right? I'm like, absolutely not. Carl, you're ignoring her. What do you mean I'm ignoring her? I said, you're ignoring her. Do this. And I told him about special time. And he's like, that won't work. I'm like, negativity bias. I'm like, oh, great. You represent an idiot. You represent me, and you're telling me it won't work. I said, do this. It works. And I'm going to call you in 3 weeks. So I wrote him in my appointment book. We had appointment books then. And 3 weeks later, I called him. Carl, it's Daniel. Daniel, she won't leave me alone. All she wants to do is be with me. As soon as I get home, she grabs my leg and wants her time. I'm like, I told you, it works. It works. Time, actual physical time. And then shut up. Listen. This is so important. Parents are awful at listening. You've heard of active listening?
Yeah.
So active listening, it's like so simple. Child says something. Before you give your 2 cents, just repeat it back and sort of listen to the feelings behind the words. I want to have blue hair. I know what my dad would have said. I want to have blue hair. No way in hell, as long as you live in my house, you can have blue hair. But what does that do? It just shuts down the conversation or starts a fight. Like, oh, you want to have blue hair? And then just be quiet. And then the child might say, everyone's doing that. My dad would say, I don't care what anyone else is doing. As long as you live in this house, you're not going to have blue hair. If they're going to jump off a cliff, are you going to go with them? Not helpful. Sounds like you want to be like the other kids. And then he might say, sometimes I feel like I don't fit in, which is really the conversation you want to have. And my mother would have said, of course you fit in. You're a good boy. You're a good-looking boy. I said, and that's not helpful either. It's just helpful to listen. If you have time and you have listening, you bond, and then the kids tend to pick your values because they're bonded. And then when they make a mistake, don't rescue them. Today, parents do way too much for their children, and they steal their self-esteem. I often say, if you do too much for your kids, you build your self-esteem by stealing theirs. And you're going to be tempted because you're going to have such love for them. You don't want them to hurt. And that's a mistake. Because character is built through struggle. Character and self-esteem are built by feeling competent you can solve problems. So when a child says, I'm bored, rather than, well, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could do this, go, I wonder what you're going to do about it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.